In House floor remarks on Wednesday, firebrand conservative lawmaker Madison Cawthorn accused the Federal Reserve of corruption. Cawthorn, a North Carolina Republican, castigated the U.S. central bank's economic power and blamed it for everyday Americans' economic woes. Cawthorn was recently defeated in a close primary election. A key Trump ally, the 27-year-old lawmaker has been a thorn in the side of party leadership, particularly Kevin McCarthy.
This is the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Cawthorn, for 5 minutes.
Madam Speaker, what do you call a group of unelected, unethical, power-hungry bureaucrats making policy decisions? In many countries, we would call them an oligarchy. In the United States, though, we call them the Federal Reserve, which is funny because the Federal Reserve has no reserves and they're absolutely not part of the federal government. For decades now, the Federal Reserve has diluted the purchasing power of the U.S. dollar, decimated private industry, and divvied up the hard-won earnings of U.S. citizens amongst corrupt power brokers in Washington and Wall Street. Let me be clear. Inflation is at its root a monetary fraud, and the Federal Reserve is the biggest counterfeiting operation in American history. This isn't a debate. At this point in our history, it's really no longer even a discussion. Decade after decade, the Federal Reserve has repeated the same cycle of corruption and destroyed our economy in the process. The Federal Reserve buys bonds from the government, printing dollars to finance these purchases. Then, they deceive us into accepting this newly printed and inflated paper as currency by making its new dollars look like real currency. This is the very essence of counterfeiting. The Great Depression of the 1930s, the Great Inflation of the 1970s, the 2008 recession, and now the 2022 recession were caused in full or in part by the greatest currency fraud operation ever attempted, aided and abetted by this hallowed institution, and built on the broken backs and fractured families of millions of American citizens. Madam Speaker, former President Garfield was right when he said whoever controls the volume of currency and money in any country is absolute master of all industry and commerce. To the American people, I say that your master is not decided at the ballot box. It's not decided in public debate or open dialogue. You didn't vote for the person who controls your life. They would never let you. Your master is the machine of federal finance that in the name of quantitative easing stripped your right to property ownership away from you, turned your existence into a groveling attempt just to get by, and sucked every last drop of autonomy from the shriveled husk of what used to be a vibrant and prosperous nation. You didn't vote for the chair of the Federal Reserve. You didn't vote for 9% inflation, but you can absolutely vote for people who are willing to destroy it and give the power back to the people. With that, I yield back.